They didn't think it would happen. They thought they could outrun it. They thought silence would save them. They thought distance would heal them. They thought pretending they didn't care would protect them. But what they never realized is that love doesn't dissolve in silence. It ferments. It multiplies. It echoes. It turns from a whisper into a scream when they're alone at night. And suddenly, the one they tried to forget becomes the only thing they can hear. And that's when the avoidant breaks. See, here's what no one ever told you. Avoid people don't avoid you. They avoid themselves. They don't disappear because you're hard to love. They disappear because your love is too accurate. Your love is too pure. Your love doesn't match the story they've been telling themselves their whole life. And when that story starts to crack, they don't lean in, they run. But what they never expected is that your love wasn't temporary. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't just attention. It was the real thing. And the real thing never leaves quietly. It doesn't go down easy. It doesn't evaporate. It stays and it builds. And that's exactly why when the avoidant finally breaks, it doesn't just hit them, it wrecks them. You want to know why they're suddenly thinking about you at 2 a.m.? You want to know why they check your page but never text? Why they sit there scrolling, pretending they don't care? Well, secretly every song, every place, every little trigger reminds them of you, because you were the one person who saw them fully and didn't flinch. You didn't just love their highlight reel. You stood there barehanded in front of their fear, their insecurity, their emotional shutdown, and you said, I'm here anyway. And that is terrifying for people who don't even stay present with themselves. But avoidance is a cheap thrill. It works for a while. It gives temporary relief. It gives them a fake sense of control. But life doesn't let you run forever. And when life slows down, when distractions stop working, when friends stop answering late night calls, when scrolling doesn't numb the ache anymore, that's when it hits them like a freight train. And suddenly, it's not peace they feel, it's absence. And that absence sounds exactly like your laugh, looks exactly like your eyes, feels exactly like the way you made chaos feel like home. And they miss you badly. Here's the truth that nobody's telling you. People don't miss people who played it small. They don't miss people who shrink themselves for love. They don't miss the ones who begged, who pleaded, who tried to convince them. They miss the ones who walked away with dignity. They miss the ones who stopped explaining and started elevating. They miss the ones who took their love and said, if you can't handle this blessing, I'll bless someone who can. And that's you now. That's who you're becoming. You are not here to audition for someone's confused heart. You are not here to dance for breadcrumbs. You're here to be the one that haunts them in the best way possible, not because you chased, because you refused to. And I know what you're thinking. If they're missing me so badly, why don't they reach out? Why don't they say it? Let me break it to you gently. Pride is one hell of a drug. And for avoidant people, pride isn't just ego, it's armor. And sometimes people will drown before they admit they're thirsty. They'll suffer in silence before they confess that you were right. But you've got to understand, this isn't your job to fix. It's not your job to make them ready. It's your job to be so focused on your growth, your peace, your glow, that when, not if, but when they come crawling back, it's you who decides if they even deserve access anymore. The avoidant finally breaks when the silence gets too heavy. They break when the people they distracted themselves with don't compare to you. They break when every conversation feels like cardboard after having tasted the richness of your presence. They break when they realize that nobody else has the combination to their heart like you did. And by then, you've leveled up. You become stronger, sharper, softer in the right places, fiercer in the ones that matter. You're not waiting by the phone anymore. You're out there creating a life so rich they couldn't buy a ticket to it if they tried. And here's the deepest truth of all. It's not revenge. It's not payback. It's not playing games. It's evolution. You don't heal to win the breakup. You heal because you're not staying at the level where people don't know how to receive you. And if they can't meet you where you've gone, then they're missing you. Is their medicine. It's their lesson. It's their fire to sit in. And I don't care if it takes them weeks, months, years, that ache will follow them like a shadow. Because you didn't come into their life to be entertainment. You came as a wake-up call. You came as the earthquake before their breakthrough. You came as proof that healthy love exists and it doesn't apologize for it. So if you've been sitting there wondering if they're thinking of you, wondering if they miss you, wondering if you mattered, Let me burn that lie out of your system right now. You did matter. You still do. And the deeper truth, the longer they hide from it, the harder it's going to hit when they can't anymore. And by the time they figure that out, you'll be too far ahead to lower your energy for someone who wasn't ready the first time. This is the era where you stop wondering if you were enough and you start realizing you were too much truth for their fake comfort zone. And that's why they miss you. Not because you begged, not because you chased, but because you stood in your power even when they ran from theirs. That's why they break. That's why they can't forget you. That's why you win. Most people don't even realize this. But the avoidant didn't run from you. They didn't disappear because you were difficult, too emotional, too needy, too much. They didn't vanish because your love was flawed. They didn't pull away because you weren't worthy. The brutal, beautiful truth is they ran because your love was accurate. It was the kind of love that saw through them. It was the kind of love that hit nerves they didn't even know they were hiding. And when a person who's been avoiding themselves their entire life suddenly meets someone who sees them, who feels them, who doesn't just fall in love with their mask, but starts reaching for their core, that's not romantic to them. It's terrifying. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding the confrontation that happens inside when someone's love exposes their deepest emotional fractures. Think about that. Your love triggered an identity crisis. You walked into their life, and whether you knew it or not, you became the mirror they couldn't escape from. And that mirror didn't just reflect back how good they looked on their best days. It reflected their fears, their emotional immaturity, their hidden wounds, their inability to fully receive love, their unfinished stories, their childhood conditioning, all of it. It reflected their unfinished self. And unfinished people don't want to look in the mirror for too long. That's why it's easier to ghost you than face themselves. It's easier to pretend they're busy. It's easier to label you as needy or intense or overwhelming because that lets them off the hook emotionally. Because if they admit that what you gave was right, that means they have to admit that they're not ready. And let me tell you something most people won't have the courage to tell you. Most people aren't ready for real love. Real love is not comfort food. Real love is not vacation vibes. Real love is surgery. It's spiritual, it's surgical. It cuts out the lies you've been living under. And for an avoidant person who spent their whole life building emotional bunkers to keep people out, your love wasn't soothing, it was disruptive. And deep down, you probably felt that. You probably knew it too. And that's why they would say things like, I don't know if I'm ready, or I'm not good at relationships, or I'm afraid I'll hurt you. Listen, when someone says things like that, believe them. Because that's code for, I don't even know how to sit with myself, let alone someone else who sees me. They didn't avoid you. They avoided the parts of themselves your love kept bringing to the surface. And here's where it gets deep. When you love someone who's avoidant, you accidentally expose them to the kind of emotional intimacy they've been running from their whole life. You don't even have to try. Just by being you, you trigger things inside them that they didn't know how to manage. And for a while, it felt good. For a while, they probably told themselves, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can change. Maybe this person will save me from myself. But the minute that love required vulnerability, required emotional honesty, required emotional responsibility, flight mode activated. Because vulnerability isn't romance to the avoidant, it's threat. Emotional closeness doesn't feel safe to them. It feels like exposure, weakness, loss of control. And let's be honest here, it's not your job to dim your love to make someone else feel safe in their emotional dysfunction. It's not your job to shrink just to keep someone comfortable in their own emotional avoidance. You were never too much. You were just more than what they were ready to handle. This is the crazy part. You were their opportunity. Your love was not a burden, it was a door. You were the doorway to healing, to transformation, to emotional growth, to a whole new level of connection. And they knew it. Maybe not fully consciously, but they felt it. That's why they stayed just long enough to taste it, but not long enough to sit in it. You were not just another relationship. You were the invitation they never RSVP'd to. Because RSVPing would have meant sitting in discomfort, sitting in fear, sitting in their own shadows, and learning to grow with you. But growth takes courage. And that's not something you can give someone. That's something they've got to build in themselves. And until they do, they will run from every version of love that looks like yours. And I want you to hear this with your whole heart. This was never about your worth. This was never about you not being lovable. This was never about you needing to do more or be more or fix something. This was about them. This was their unfinished work showing up in your love story. And it's not your responsibility to carry someone else's unfinished business. If they didn't have the courage to meet you where you were, that's their missed opportunity, not yours. And if you can start seeing it like that, something wild happens. You stop chasing and you start choosing. You stop over-explaining and you start detaching with dignity. You stop blaming yourself for someone else's emotional avoidance and start realizing that their disappearance was a compliment in disguise. Because people don't run from things that don't challenge them. They run from things that confront the parts of themselves they're not yet ready to heal. Let me give it to you even more raw. Your love scared them because it was accurate. It was pure. It didn't need costumes. It didn't need games. It didn't require filters. It was whole. And whole love makes broken people uncomfortable. Not because they don't want it, but because they don't feel worthy of it yet. And instead of rising to meet your standard, they chose comfort over courage, familiar pain over unknown healing. And that has nothing to do with your beauty, your worth, your intelligence, or your heart. That's about their inner war. And you don't deserve to be caught in someone else's emotional civil war. The fact that they couldn't handle your love is not your punishment. It's your protection. The fact that they left doesn't mean you lost. It means you dodged. It means that you're being repositioned, elevated, shifted into spaces where your love is not just noticed, it's valued. Where someone looks at you and doesn't flinch, where someone doesn't get scared by the realness of your care, but honored by it. And I don't care how many avoidants cross your path in life, never, ever, ever shrink the size of your love to fit someone's emotional wounds. You stay big, you stay bright, you stay bold, you stay pure, because at the end of the day, they didn't leave because you weren't good enough. They left because you were too true for their false narratives to survive. And if that's not powerful, I don't know what is. Most people don't realize what real love does to someone who's been running from themselves their whole life. It doesn't vanish, doesn't dissolve in time. It doesn't get replaced by distractions, rebound flings, or cold logic. Real love plants seeds in the unconscious. It roots itself so deep inside their nervous system that months later, years later, it still echoes through every corner of their life. It comes back in memories they didn't ask for, in dreams they can't explain, in silent moments they can't escape. And that's what happens to the avoidant when they finally break. They don't just think about you, they're haunted by you. Haunted not because you were a wound, but because you were the medicine they rejected. And real medicine leaves a trace. Real love leaves a residue they can't wash off, no matter how far they run. They can scroll, swipe, distract, hook up, dive in to work, even pretend they're healed. But deep down, they know the truth. Nobody loved them like you did. Nobody saw through their walls like you did. Nobody brought out that version of them that they almost believed in, the one that could be present, open, vulnerable, emotionally alive. You made them believe for a moment they could be that person. You sparked something that was dormant for years. That part of them that actually wanted connection, real, raw, unfiltered connection. You touched that. You didn't just touch it, you woke it up. And now that it's awake and you're gone, the silence left behind is unbearable. That silence is deafening. It's not peace. It's a reminder every time they lay their head down at night, the noise stops. There you are, in their head, in their memory, in their gut. Because you weren't just a moment, you were a turning point. You were a mirror that showed them what they could be if they were brave enough to stay. And they weren't. And now they're stuck between knowing what they felt was real and not having the tools to go back and claim it. Because you're not sitting around waiting. You're not feeding their ego anymore. You're not posting things to get their attention. You're not texting at 2 a.m. when the loneliness hits. You're gone. And it's that absence, that lack of your emotional energy that's eating away at them. Because for the first time, they don't just feel alone. They feel what it's like to lose someone who got them. Someone who made their chaos feel like home. Someone who loved them even when they were emotionally clumsy. And they know they won't get that again because love like that doesn't come around twice. It doesn't repeat itself just because you changed your mind late. They don't miss the superficial things. They don't miss what you look like, what you posted, what you wore. They miss the way you made them feel, the safety in your presence, the calm in your voice, the way you didn't react to their distance with anger, but with understanding, the way you saw their shutdown as fear, not rejection. You gave them a level of compassion most people wouldn't even know how to offer. And they miss that. They crave that. But the thing is, they don't know how to ask for it. They don't know how to come back and say, you were right. They don't know how to come back and say, I was scared and you were the safest thing I ever had. That level of humility would break them wide open. So instead, they suffer silently, proudly, painfully. And that's why it hits them so hard. Because when someone avoids feelings their whole life and then finally opens just enough to feel a little bit of love, only to run again, what's left behind isn't just guilt, it's grief. And regret is not soft. Regret is not poetic. Regret is a monster that follows them into every future connection, whispering, you had the real thing and you let it go. And it's that whisper that keeps them awake. It's that whisper that makes them scroll through your old texts at 1 a.m., that makes them check your page anonymously, that makes them look at someone new and know immediately this isn't the same. That whisper becomes their punishment. Not because you wished it upon them, but because that's the price of running from real love. And let's be honest, what they miss the most is your consistency, your ability to love them even when they made it hard, your capacity to stay patient when they were shutting down, your emotional maturity in moments where they gave nothing, because the truth is, they knew they were emotionally unavailable. They knew they were shutting you out. They knew they were pushing someone away who was trying to give. And that's why it hurts them now. Because they don't miss someone who chased them. They miss someone who stood by them when they didn't know how to ask for help. They miss someone who fought for them with love, not force. And now that you're not there anymore, and now that you've pulled your energy back, they're left with a version of themselves they hate. A version of themselves that sabotaged the one thing that actually had the power to change them. The irony is they used to think silence would protect them, that running would give them peace, that distance would let them feel free. But now they realize freedom without connection is isolation. And they're not proud of the choices they made. They're not feeling powerful. They're feeling trapped in the mess they created, trapped in the fear they never resolved, trapped in the story of, I'm not good enough, that your love tried to rewrite. And they miss you not because you're gone, but because now they know what they lost. They miss you because you proved them wrong, and they didn't have the courage to rise to that truth. They miss the way you made them better without ever forcing them to change. They miss how you brought light into their darkness without needing credit for it. They miss how you saw their pain and didn't run, how you stayed anyway. And that's what makes it hurt, because now they see not everyone would have done that. Not everyone would have stayed. Not everyone would have believed in them the way you did. And no one loved them with that kind of depth. And now it's too late. You're not just out of sight, you're out of reach. And that's what they feel every single day. Every quiet moment, every celebration they can't share with you, every birthday, every milestone, every lonely night, there's a piece of you missing, and nothing can fill it. Not fast love, not fake intimacy, not temporary highs because the love you gave. It was timeless. It was real. It was the kind that doesn't get replaced. It only gets remembered forever. Most people think that when someone misses you, it's because of your messages, your calls, your begging, your crying, your emotional breakdowns, your pleading for another chance. But that's not what pulls them back. That's not what makes someone sit in the dark at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering what they just destroyed. People don't miss desperation. They don't miss someone chasing them, hunting them down, constantly giving energy with nothing in return. They don't miss you when you're lowering yourself, shrinking, abandoning your self-respect just to get a breadcrumb of their attention. That doesn't build attraction, it builds resentment. What they actually miss is power. They miss the energy you had before you forgot who you were. They miss the moments when you were standing tall in yourself, when your laugh was effortless, when your eyes were full of vision, when you had a life bigger than them. What they miss is the strength of your spirit before you traded it for approval. They don't miss you begging. They miss you choosing your peace, choosing your purpose, choosing to love them from overflow, not from need, because strength is magnetic. Strength is unforgettable. Strength is what makes them realize I just lost something I'll never find again. This is why they start to break when you stop. They break when the game changes. They break when they reach for you and realize you're not there anymore. Not because you hate them, not because you're trying to punish them, but because you remembered your value. You remembered that your energy is sacred. You remembered that love is a gift, not a bribe, not a currency to be traded for crumbs of attention. You remembered that your worth was never on trial in that relationship. The second you stopped showing up in desperation and started showing up in discipline, they felt it. They felt it in their gut, in their chest, in that sudden sinking feeling when they realized, oh no, I lost them for real this time. Not because you blocked them, not because you wrote them long emotional paragraphs, but because your silence had dignity. Because you weren't running, you were rising. You weren't posting to prove a point. You were building something bigger than proving anything to them. You were no longer the version of yourself that was addicted to explaining why you deserved to be loved. And when that shift happens, when you go from chasing to choosing, that's when they start missing you. Not like a memory they scroll past, but like an ache they can't soothe. Because people can replace attention, they can replace conversations, they can replace surface level connections, but they can't replace power. They can't duplicate the energy of someone who was whole before they met them. And that's what you were. You may have forgotten it for a while. You may have bent over backwards, tried to mold yourself, tried to soften your standards to make it work. But that was never your natural state. Your natural state was power. Your natural state was being magnetic because you had you, not because you needed them. And they knew that. Even when they pulled away, even when they ghosted, even when they acted like they didn't care, they felt that underneath it all, you were someone who could thrive with or without them. And nothing is more terrifying to a person who was trying to control the dynamic than realizing the other person doesn't need them. That's why when you stopped chasing, they didn't feel relieved, they felt panic. Because now the supply is cut off. Not the supply of texts, not the supply of selfies, not the supply of late night arguments, the supply of your presence, your care, your consistency, your standard. That's what they miss. They miss the version of themselves they were starting to become when they were with you. You made them want to grow. You made them want to level up. You made them curious about parts of themselves they never thought about before. You saw their potential even when they were acting small. And that's why your absence hits them harder than anything else. Because you weren't just giving attention, you were giving transformation. And when that transformation disappears, they don't just lose a person, they lose a path. You were the door, and now the door's locked, and they don't have the key anymore. What's wild is that they'll sit with other people, they'll try to flirt, they'll go out, they'll laugh, they'll pretend, but none of it lands the same. None of it penetrates the surface. None of it carries the weight you carried. Because attention is cheap, but alignment is rare. And that's what they lost. They lost alignment. They lost someone who wasn't there for the moment. They were there for the mission. And missions don't show up every weekend at the bar. Missions don't slide into the DMs every other week. Missions are divine appointments. And you were theirs, and they fumbled it. And that's why they're suffering now, because they know. They know. They might not tell you, they might not post about it, they might not call you, but they know deep down they're aware that you were the real thing in a world full of filters and half-hearted connections. And they can't stand the fact that they let their pride, their fear, their laziness, their immaturity block what could have been everything they ever said they wanted. And don't ever get it twisted. They didn't miss you until you stood up for yourself. They didn't miss you when you were crying. They didn't miss you when you were typing out 3-paragraph texts explaining your love. They didn't miss you when you were available at their convenience. They missed you when you got dangerous. Dangerous in your healing. Dangerous in your silence. Dangerous in your boundaries. Dangerous in your focus. That's when the longing set in. That's when they started realizing this wasn't a game anymore. You weren't another player. You were the whole field, the whole league. And they got kicked out. Not because you hate them, but because you leveled out of that frequency. You see, when you stop giving people the parts of you that you should have been giving to your own growth, you don't just become attractive, you become undeniable. And that's what's driving them mad. It's not that they don't see other attractive people, it's that they don't see you again. They don't see that energy, that light, that mission level love you gave. They don't see that one-of-one, not for sale, custom-built kind of presence that doesn't shrink just to fit someone's insecurity. And now, Now they're in the place they never thought they'd be. The place where they need you and you don't need them. And that's why their mind is running loops they can't break. That's why their heart beats faster when they think of you. Because you're not a chapter. They realize you were the plot twist. And they missed it. And now they're standing outside the door of your life knocking, but you don't even live at that address anymore. You moved. You leveled up. And all they're left with now is memory. And that memory doesn't call them back. That memory doesn't chase. That memory just smiles. Because it knows power doesn't beg. And you, my friend, you finally remembered who you are.